Young Sherlock Holmes and cocktail making are two things that myself and Sam discuss in this conversation. Yes, I'm speaking with Sam Espensen of Espensen Spirit, and she was the official drinks provider of Forbidden Worlds Film Festival. We have a great conversation, and if you enjoyed this shorter form interview, please check out my conversation with Kinza Druitt, as well as Faith Roswell, and my part in the roundtable discussion with legendary producer Galen Hurd. In addition to that, go to Spider-Dan The Secret Balls, his link will be in the description, because you get the other half of all the other interviews with the people I have just mentioned. And also check out all our other coverage of Forbidden Worlds Film Festival, including all of our movie reviews and all that kind of stuff, and check out all the other great content on our channels. So please comment below with all of your thoughts, make sure to subscribe and check out all the other great videos that I've got on this channel, and check out Spider-Dan and The Secret Balls for more. So without further ado, here is Sam Espensen.
Hello, Sam. It's lovely to meet you. Obviously, I was introduced to you by Dan, and you've been incredibly welcoming to me, so thank you so much for that. So you obviously have a drink named after Sherlock Holmes. So why don't you tell us about young Sherlock Holmes, and also you got to ask a question to the cast, to Nicholas and to Sophie as well. How was that for you, and why do you love a young Sherlock Holmes so much?
So I wanted to talk about it because it was a real seminal movie for me, because I am and was a huge movie geek, and I was lucky enough to be raised in the days of video shops, and raised in days of video shops where they had really weird things as well, and so I'm one of those people that would look at the covers of VHSs that I wasn't able to take out, and I wasn't able to do it. Lots of esoteric stuff. Young Sherlock Holmes came along, and it was this weird, original, even though it was based on something so famous, really psychedelic, trippy film with this amazing special effects and stop motion. And I come from a family of like VFX geeks and nerds and people who, make models and do all of that stuff. So to see this great stuff and it seemed so revolutionary at the time. I remember being really genuinely terrified of like the stained glass night and the food monsters and all this kind of stuff. But also, really importantly, the fact that there was this young cast who just kind of screamed onto the screen and just owned it completely. And it was really interesting to hear Nicholas say that he felt very green and was very aware that he could see it on the screen. And I know actors always look at themselves and often cringe and feel that, but my question, I almost said my question is more of a comment and then managed to not say that, but it's the point that as that young person myself, I'm only 6 years younger than him. I saw that greenness as us being represented on the screen. We had Indiana Jones, we had Romancing the Stone, all of these kind of classic, wizened middle-aged men who I loved and still do, but they didn't really represent young people. And it was things like Short Round, in Temple of Doom and stuff, who were great. But again, they weren't driving the action so much. They weren't the clever clogs, they were the sidekicks. So seeing Nicholas in particular, that performance really kind of, and you can see him growing and learning on the screen. And Sophie, and there was a comment about, was she damselized? And actually, I didn't feel like that, because there was a lot more women at the time in movies who were being much more treated as the sidekicks, whereas she was very much her own agent. She was very much part of the team with her uncle and all that kind of stuff. So it was a really amazing moment for me today to be able to speak to them and say that. I don't often get starstruck, and today was a real exception, and I loved every minute of it. So
it's amazing, because I'd never seen Young Sherlock before this festival. I watched it a few weeks ago and did a review on it and things, and I was blown away by how good it was. Not that I didn't expect that, but when there's films that one hasn't heard of, especially when they do genre film festivals, there's a lot of films that are playing in Forbidden World, which are amazing in their own right, but the reason a lot of us haven't seen them, or the reason they're cult films, is because the mainstream often reject them. This one feels like it should be accepted. This feels like if this came out on Netflix tomorrow, it would go widespread.
That's right.
And I think it just, for one reason or another, got very unlucky and just slipped under the radar. And I was so blown away. And I very briefly managed to speak to Nicholas and Sophie right at the end as they were just starting off. And all I said to them was, it was so amazing being able to hear you say this stuff. But, my wife is pregnant at the moment, and I can't wait to show the kid films like Young Sherlock, when they're old enough, because it's PG, but it's like slightly, it depends on the kid. But I think it's a film that really is timeless. And I just think it works on so many levels of the amount of CG, but also the practical effects. And as you say, you feel immediately immersed with the characters, you feel confident with them, and you feel like you're with them. And you feel like you grow with them. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's great. I couldn't put it better myself.
Well, last question then, which is, because you're a film buff and your family are film, so very ambiguous question, answer however you desire. What is film to you?
Film is life, obviously. Cinema is cinema. In all seriousness, I was very lucky that my father was a photographer and he was a huge film buff, and he brought me up. We watched movies constantly, and I was very lucky that from when I was about 6 or 7, he would show me one current film a week and one sort of pre-80s or pre-70s film a week. So by the time I got to my early teens, I had seen thousands of films, from, you know, kind of Singing in the Rain through to, you know, really obscure French flicks to Indiana Jones. And, you know, he showed me Alien when I was like 12.
My father did the same thing.
Yeah, and you know, it was my dad that showed me Terminator. You know, you often hear these stories that it's people's brothers or sisters, but it's not often people's fathers who are like scaring them rigid and doing all this stuff. And I ended up going on to do a film degree and then working in the industry. So it you know, ironically, Espensen Spirit was my kind of first career that's not involved in some way or other with the industry. And
find your way back in.
But actually what it's allowed me to do is the festival is fun and has made films fun again. And on a serious note, working in the industry, it's quite hard to take a step back and enjoy the art of it again. And actually Forbidden Worlds has very much been that avenue back for me into being a fan and a member of the audience again. So just to wrap that up nicely, but it's, you know, this is a place for people to come and love it. And I adore film. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. But before we let you go, obviously, why don't you tell the audience, Espensen Spirits, tell us a little bit about that, where they can find you and what you do, basically, as a little promo for yourself.
So basically, Espensen Spirit, we make exceptional spirits in East Bristol. We do all kinds of things from weddings to film festivals to markets. And I make mostly infused gins and vodkas, and I have a whiskey on the go. I'm a bathtub gin maker, which means I have big tubs and I have a giant wooden spoon and I stir things around in it. I don't distill anything because that's hard and that's science. Don't do science. I'm more of your like hag down the end of the garden, you know, stirring things around and throw weird herbs. That's what I am. But you can find us online. You can find us here and in all good bars around Bristol. So espensenspirit.com.
It's amazing. We'll put all the details in the show notes. And I can say, as someone who's been testing pretty much all of the cocktails throughout the weekend, they're all amazing. The trick is now, often when you have a lot of cocktails, it's not like, that's my favorite one. It's, I like all of them. What vibe am I in? What mood am I in for? And I like pretty much all alcohol. So I love whiskey. We've had a couple of gin cocktails. I like vodka. So I'm great. Rum and whiskey are my two absolute favorites. So cannot wait to see more stuff that you come out of Forbidden Worlds and beyond. So thank you so much for making the time. I know, thank you obviously for being so kind to myself and Dan and giving us your time.
Thanks for having me.